The sun over Dry Creek Valley was harsh that summer, burning the plains gold and the hearts of men brittle. Dust clung to everything: boots, whiskey glasses, and pride. The townsfolk learned to live quiet lives under that heat, where words cost more than water, and promises were broken easier than glass. Mara Bell lived on the edge of town in a small house built by her father before his debts buried him alive. She had her mother's soft brown eyes but her father's stubborn will, a combination that made her both tender and unbreakable. After her father's passing, the land passed not to her but to the hands of the banker, who saw women as decorations, not owners. And so, one sweltering afternoon, the banker sold the Bell Ranch, along with everything on it. That included Mara. She stood silent on the porch as the deal was struck, her hands folded around the frayed brim of her hat. The men didn't even lower their voices. $300 for the land and the house, said the banker, fanning himself with a folded paper. She stays to work until the debt's cleared. Girl's strong, knows her way around a horse. The buyer, a tall man in a dark coat, removed his gloves slowly. You're selling her like property. The banker laughed. Just part of the terms, Mr. Holt. She won't give you trouble. The man, Elias Holt, didn't laugh. His gray eyes studied Mara like a storm sizing up the sky. I don't buy people, he said quietly, but he signed the paper anyway. The ranch needed work, and there wasn't a soul in 3 counties who'd help him rebuild after the fire that took his wife and child. When he looked at Mara again, something flickered in his face: pity, or maybe recognition. Pack what you need, he said. We ride at dawn. That night, Mara sat on her porch and watched the sun bleed into the horizon. The deal was done. She had been handed over like property. Yet, in the dying light, she whispered to herself, I won't stay someone's possession. Elias Holt's ranch lay several miles west, near the foothills where the land broke into wild ridges. The ride was long and silent. Mara's eyes were fixed on the road, Elias's gaze stayed ahead. The wind carried the smell of dust and pine, and somewhere in that stillness, they began to understand one another's silence. At the ranch, she saw what remained: a burned-out barn, a lonely corral, and a single white horse grazing near a fence post. The house was half rebuilt, the rest waiting for hands that wouldn't tremble. You'll have your own room, Elias said gruffly. Food's scarce, but we'll manage. She nodded. I'm not here for charity. I know, he said. You're here because life ain't fair. The days that followed were harder than any she'd known. Mara mended fences, cooked what little they had, and hauled water from the creek. Elias worked beside her, silent but kind. He never gave orders, he asked. And though she tried to hate him for buying her, she couldn't. There was something wounded in him, something that spoke the same language as her loneliness. At night, when the wind howled through the cracks of the house, she heard him talking softly, to ghosts she couldn't see. The names, Clara and Luke, floated in the dark. His wife and son, she guessed. Lost to the fire. One evening, she found him sitting by the old barn, holding a half-burnt toy horse. The sky was orange and heavy with dust. Without speaking, she sat beside him. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. They said you bought me, she murmured after a while. He nodded. Maybe I did. But I don't want to own you. Then why'd you sign? He looked at her, his jaw tight. Because the banker would have sold you to someone worse. Her throat tightened. You should have let me fight. I saw the fire in you. He said. But fire burns itself out if it's got no shelter. She didn't reply, but for the first time since her father's death, she didn't feel alone. Weeks passed, and the ranch began to live again. Grass grew where ash once lay, and laughter, soft, hesitant, crept into the evenings. Mara found herself singing while she worked, her voice low and warm. Elias pretended not to listen, but he always worked closer when she did. Then one afternoon, a rider came galloping up the road, a man in a fine coat and silver spurs. The banker's mark. His name was Wade Carrington, and he was the kind of man who smiled without warmth. "Miss Bell," he drawled, tipping his hat. "Heard you've been making yourself useful." Elias stepped forward. "State your business." Carrington's grin widened. "Just checking on my investment. I sold her to you, Mr. Holt, but I didn't sell her freedom. She still owes the bank $50. Mara's hands clenched. "That's a lie. Paper says otherwise," Carrington said, waving a folded document. "Either she works for me 3 more months, or you pay." Elias's voice hardened. "You'll get your money." "I'm sure I will." Carrington's eyes lingered on Mara too long. "Fine thing, isn't she? Shame to waste her out here." When he rode off, Mara turned on Elias. "You shouldn't have offered to pay. It's my debt." "It's not about money," he said quietly. "It's about keeping you safe." "I don't need saving," she snapped. He smiled sadly. "Maybe not. But I need saving, Mara." That night, rain came for the first time in months. The land drank greedily, and so did the hearts of those who had waited too long for relief. Mara watched from the porch, the drops glimmering in her hair, when Elias came up beside her. "You could leave," he said softly. "Once the debt's cleared." She turned to him. "And go where?" "Anywhere. You don't owe me." Her voice broke. "I know. But maybe I want to stay." He looked at her then, really looked, like a man seeing dawn after years of night. The rain fell harder, and somewhere in it, something between them finally began to heal. The rain had washed the dust from Dry Creek, but it couldn't wash away the marks life left on people. Mara woke early the next morning, the smell of wet earth drifting through the window. Elias was already outside, checking the fences after the storm. She watched him for a moment, his shirt damp against his back, his movements quiet and deliberate. There was something steady about him, something that made the world feel less cruel. She stepped outside, pulling her shawl tight. "You're up early." He smiled faintly without turning. "Rain knocked down half the fence. Figured I'd get ahead of it. I'll help." He looked over his shoulder. "You don't have to. I want to." They worked side by side until the sun crept over the ridge. The light turned the wet grass into gold, and for a moment, Mara forgot the world had ever been unkind. But life had a way of reminding her. By noon, a shadow appeared down the road, 2 riders this time. When they drew closer, she recognized Wade Carrington, the banker, and another man beside him, a broad-shouldered ranch hand with a mean look in his eyes. "Morning, Mr. Holt," Carrington called, reining in his horse. "I'm here about our arrangement." Elias straightened. "You'll get your money tomorrow." "Afraid tomorrow's too late." Carrington pulled a folded document from his coat. "Seems the debt's been reassessed. 50's now 75. Interest, you understand." Mara stepped forward. "That's robbery." Carrington smirked. "It's business, sweetheart. You of all people should know what happens when debts go unpaid." Elias's hand twitched near his belt. "You come to collect, or to provoke?" Carrington laughed, softly. "Just came to offer an alternative. She can work off the new amount at my place in town. Keep my books, maybe pour drinks at the saloon. She's got the face for it." Mara's face went pale. Elias stepped in front of her. "You'll take your papers and leave. Or what?" The ranch hand beside Carrington sneered. "You gonna shoot a man over a debt?" Elias's voice dropped. "If that debt's written in blood, I might." Carrington's smirk faded, but only slightly. "You've got until sundown tomorrow. After that, the girl comes with me." They turned and rode off, dust swirling behind them. When they were gone, Mara turned on Elias, fury and shame twisting her voice. "You shouldn't have done that." He frowned. "Done what?" "Made it worse. He'll come back, and he'll bring trouble." Elias's jaw tightened. "I've seen men like Carrington my whole life. Bullies crumble when you stand taller." Her eyes filled with tears. "And what happens when they don't crumble? When they burn everything you care about?" He didn't answer. He just looked at her, the pain in his eyes older than either of them. That night, she found him sitting at the kitchen table, an old ledger open before him. He'd been trying to find money. Anywhere. To pay the new debt. His hands were shaking. She sat across from him. You lost something before the fire, didn't you? He looked up slowly. Everything. My wife. My boy. They died because I wasn't home. I was in town, drinking away guilt I hadn't earned. But I earned it that night. Her voice softened. You think you don't deserve to live? He didn't answer. You're wrong, she said quietly. You just forgot how. He met her eyes then, and something cracked open inside both of them. Not love yet. Something deeper, something fragile. The beginning of forgiveness. The next day came too fast. The sun climbed high, and no rider appeared. Mara hoped Carrington had given up, but Elias knew better. He saddled his horse and loaded his rifle. You're not going alone, she said. He glanced at her. You staying's what keeps this ranch standing. I'm not your possession, remember? She said, a small smile ghosting her lips. You don't get to decide where I stand. He looked at her, then nodded once. All right, but stay behind me when the talking starts. They rode into Dry Creek just before noon. The town was half asleep, the air heavy with heat. Carrington was waiting outside the saloon, his boots propped on the rail, a silver coin rolling between his fingers. Well, if it isn't the noble rancher and his lady servant, he said lazily. She's no servant, Elias said. Carrington's eyes glinted. No, paper says otherwise. Elias dropped a small pouch onto the porch. $75. Count it. Carrington picked it up, smirking. You're a man of your word, Holt. Shame that don't buy you peace. He nodded to the ranch hand beside him, who drew his gun. Elias reacted fast. He pushed Mara behind a barrel, drew his own revolver, and fired. The shot struck the man's arm, sending him sprawling. Carrington ducked and cursed, fumbling for his weapon. Stop! Mara shouted, stepping out before Elias could shoot again. Her voice trembled but didn't break. No more killing. That's what he wants. Elias froze, his breath ragged. Carrington rose slowly, clutching his wounded partner. You'll regret that, Carrington hissed. Both of you. He spat in the dirt and stormed off, leaving the money where it fell. The ride back was silent. The air between them was heavy, not with anger, but with everything unspoken. As the ranch came into view, Elias finally said, You shouldn't have stepped in front of me like that. And you shouldn't have to fight every battle alone. He looked at her. You could have been killed. So could you, she said softly. And then where would I be? He stopped his horse. Why do you care so much? She met his gaze. Because you never treated me like property. And that's the first kindness I've known in a long time. Something in him broke then. The wall, the guilt, the distance. He leaned toward her, but stopped short, the moment trembling between them like a held breath. Don't, she whispered, though her voice said otherwise. You don't owe me love just because you saved me. I don't owe you, he said. I want you. For a long moment, the wind was the only sound, the slow sigh of the plains, the whisper of something that felt like hope. But hope was a fragile thing in Dry Creek. That night, the barn went up in flames. Mara woke to the crack of fire and the shouts of horses. Elias was already running, bucket in hand. The blaze was fierce, too fierce to be an accident. Carrington's revenge had come quick. They fought the fire until dawn. When it finally died, half the barn was gone, and Elias lay coughing in the ash, his hands blistered. Mara knelt beside him. Why didn't you let me go in? Because I couldn't lose someone again, he rasped. Her tears cut streaks through the soot on her cheeks. You won't. Not this time. The next day, she rode into town alone. Dust clung to her boots, but her eyes burned bright. Carrington was at his desk, smiling when she entered. Well, if it ain't my favorite debtor. She slammed a pistol down on his desk. You came for property, she said. I came for justice. He raised an eyebrow. You gonna shoot me, little girl? No, I'm gonna ruin you. She threw a bundle of papers onto the desk. Records she'd found in the banker's own ledgers, hidden behind false names. Land stolen from widows, Payments forged, debts fabricated. She'd learned to read her father's handwriting well enough to spot his signature, and she saw how Carrington had used it to trap her family. "I know what you did," she said. "And now everyone else will too." Carrington's smirk faltered. "You don't have proof. I've got witnesses. Elias Holt saw you forge his payment, and I've got half the town ready to testify you've been cheating them for years." He paled. "You wouldn't. Try me." By sunset, the sheriff had Carrington in cuffs, his empire of lies collapsing like a house of cards. Mara stood outside the jail, the last of the firelight fading behind her. She should have felt triumph, but what she felt was relief. The kind that comes after years of carrying weight that was never hers to bear. When she rode home, Elias was waiting by the gate. His bandaged hands rested on the fence, his eyes soft. "Heard what you did," he said. "Town's talking." She smiled faintly. "Good talk or bad?" "Both," he said, and chuckled. "That's how you know it's real." She dismounted and walked toward him. "It's over, Elias. The debt, the lies, all of it." He nodded slowly. "What'll you do now?" She looked out over the land, golden in the twilight. "I think I'll start over. Maybe build something worth owning." He hesitated. "And if I asked you to stay?" She turned to him, eyes bright as the evening star. "I already did." He reached out, his hand trembling as it found hers. No more bargains, no more debts. Just two souls who had been broken by the same world, finally learning they didn't belong to it, but to each other. And as the sun sank over Dry Creek, the air smelled of rain and second chances.